Okay, so first session, figures in the cityscape based on my trip to Italy, which was amazing. I cannot wait to go back. I did learn my lesson. We went in end of June, beginning of July. It was so hot and so crowded. So actually the photo that I chose today that I have for you guys, that was nothing. You kind of felt like you were in, it was an off day. It felt like you were in Times Square on New Year's Eve, every place you went. So, I am very lucky. We were all very lucky. Nobody got sick. I was really surprised. Yeah, nobody got sick or pickpocketed. I was very surprised, but it all worked out. I'm going to share my screen. We're gonna start with, boy, I am really rusty. There it is. We're gonna talk first about just another artist that you guys may know of named Desmond O'Hagan. Um, hold on a second. Let me minimize you guys for a second here. Move things out of the way. Okay, let me put him in there. Desmond O'Hagan. Desmond, can you guys see that? Everybody? Yeah, okay. So he works in oils as well as pastels. I don't know how popular he is in the oil world. In the pastelling world, he's pretty popular, pretty famous. I want to talk about him for a minute because I just saw this painting the other day. This is an oil. I don't know where he lives. It is the United States, but I want to say somewhere like Colorado-ish, but then again, I could be thinking of someone else. So I'm not 100%. This is an oil painting and it's huge. You can see it's 48 by 36. But even at 48 by 36, his figures will have more detail than we will in our lessons today, but they're still really super simplified. Um, you give a hint of a nose, a hint of an ear, the little shine on the forehead. Nothing too crazy. So we're going to talk about. I want to go to his photos and see if there's some other ones that we could. He does mainly cityscapes. There's usually a figure in it, like his bar scene. I feel like I kind of isn't that gorgeous with the way the light's coming in? And again, you look at it, it feels like there's a lot of detail. It feels like you could sit there and walk in, but there's not. It's really simplified. I mean, there's just a few strokes, but it's all based on value. You have that little bright shine on the hardwood floor there with the blue that's reflecting against the dark, rich red brown of the floor. Yes, drawing certainly comes into play here. And that's what we're going to focus on today is some drawing. This is nice, just quick figures. He bravely puts cars in. I don't like painting cars. I always feel like they look very. Remember? Yes. Yep. Yeah, I did put headlights in on the one. That was okay. It kind of worked out, but not really. So these folks just hanging out again. We can see a beard. We can see where the eyes are located, where everything's located, but not anyone in particular, I mean, I guess if you really knew the people, you'd be like, oh, I can tell that so and so. But what we're going to be focused on is proportions, gesture, meaning the way they're moving, how they're expressing, how, some people, if they're walking down the street telling a story and their hands are flying in the air, that kind of stuff, or weird poses, like somebody's just, got their hand on their hip kind of a thing. So we're going to look at stuff like that. We're also going to look at the perspective of the buildings. Ooh, this one's a nice, super simple one. He does have workshops. See, I don't know if he traveled for this workshop in Santa Fe.
Mm.
He might travel. He might, but I think he's
I want
Southwest.
to go there, the Bluebird Studios.
Oh,
My
yeah.
friend did that. Yeah,
Oh,
she said it was great.
uh, so again, we've touched on this kind of thing. So today, our image has most of the people with their backs to us, which I did that on purpose because sometimes it is nice to not have to worry about the face and we can just focus on the size of the body. Um, so we're going to talk about as we go the size of the bodies, not only in proportion with itself, meaning torso to legs, but the size of the bodies to the buildings themselves. So that's going to be part of our whole composition that we're going to set up by the end of the class to start next class is um, if we don't get the size of the bodies right, we're going to either look like Godzilla running through the streets of Japan, or we're going to look like ants against, these really huge buildings. So we have to really kind of think about that and how to measure that out. This one, by the way, this one back here, I really liked. She doesn't technically have feet, but it doesn't mean that they're not there. It doesn't mean that they're not slightly suggested. You can kind of tell that there's a shoe there, but there's no sole of the shoe drawn out or painted. It's just a hint with, it looks like he just kind of scooted the yellow pastel right over where the feet would be, and it kind of just gave him what he needed. Um, that's the kind of stuff that, for the purpose of this class, that's what we're doing. We're not, it's not a 18 by 24 painting of a single figure. We're representing more of a representational painting that we're going to be focusing on. I wonder how big that one is. Doesn't say. Oh, see, that was in Denver. I don't know. So he's south. Um, I did want to take a class with him. I was going to when I went to IAPS. When was that? Gosh, 28, 20, 2019. I went to IAPS. I got the scholarship for a free class, and I wanted to take his class because it was one of the longer classes. It was like a whole 3 days or 4 days. Um, but it started on Monday and the convention didn't start till Wednesday. And then all of the awards were on Friday or Saturday and the banquet. And I wanted to be there for the banquet. And it was just too many days away. And then I would have to miss. So anyway, I didn't take his. I took Sally Strand, which she's amazing if you can ever take a Sally Strand workshop. What I got from Sally was the stuff that, because I didn't go to art school, she talks about all, high key, low key, composition and so much in designing your painting. And that was a 2-day workshop that she condensed from a 5-day workshop. I would love to have taken a 5-day workshop with her. She was just brilliant. Okay. So
What's her last name, Renee?
Strand, as in strand of hair,
Strand.
Strand. She's out in California. She won.
Combining.
I know, right?
I'm just saying.
I'm just
And you
saying.
can write the trip off.
It just right.
I would say, yeah.
My husband will be fine with it. And my work.
Yeah.
Now I gotta think about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the next thing we're going to talk about, I'm going to pull up the images. I'll share my screen again. I'm going to pull up the images and we're going to talk a little bit about the images that we're using. I sent you guys 3 images. They are all the same photograph, just cropped differently.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, wait, hold on. I have to open up the folder first. And then I can share it. Do that. Okay. Oh, I wonder if I have to. Okay. Oopsies. Sometimes when I pull up images, like I have to share and unshare my screen. So, go there. see if I open them up in the folder, if I can go back and forth without losing you guys. So this is technically not even the original. I cropped out a lot of street. And so, you know, when you're in a city setting like this, these lines and anybody, like we've done some cityscapes. I know most of you have done at least a cityscape with me. These extreme angles that we have, these are the things that make or break the painting or the drawing. So we're going to focus on that first in our drawing when we get to that portion of it. And we're going to use our skewers. I'm going to use my skewer for that kind of thing. But then I sent you guys, so then I just started cropping it down. Amazingly, these are all from my cell phone. And the fact that it was able to crop down, actually, so this was the second one. So you can see I just cropped the tops of the buildings off to focus on the people. So I liked this group of 4 ladies shopping. I thought that was a pretty good gesture. But you see how everybody's just kind of swarmed together in the distance. And then we have a couple others. There's one guy. He would be a good one to paint. If you guys have the ability to crop in even more. But we'll get to that in a minute. And then I cropped in again and focused. Oh, okay. Now they're side by side. Anyway, those are those things sometimes you don't know what you do. You just did it. So let me uncheck that one. Okay. So you can see like the image is even smaller on my screen because this is such a small image now that I cropped into. But a little lesson that I kind of like, I wonder if it'll show me all 3 at once. Ooh, it does. Nice. Okay. So one of the things that I was kind of thinking about with myself in my own composition was I always want to, get sky in there and more sky. And I was just, you've got all these buildings here. And then when I cropped down, I was like, oh, that's kind of a nice composition. Well, that's even a better composition. We start to change up angles. The first one, we're looking straight down the street. The second one, we moved that vanishing point. Well, I guess, hold on. This is the second one on the far right. The vanishing point is still kind of centered, but it's just a more pleasant angle, in my opinion. I feel like the first one is just the angle is just so crazy and high. So this one, the angle a little more pleasant. And then this one, we move the vanishing point off to the right. It becomes more interesting. So you can play with that initial image and crop it in whatever way you want. But I just wanted to bring that up. This center image is much more visually appealing from the point of view of us as artists than the first one. But I got all that information from the first one. So always take time to play with your images and just crop away as long as the quality can stay or can stay enough to get the information that you need. Actually, if it blurs out, sometimes that's even better. But another thing I wanted to kind of point out, and we're going to work on this as we go. If you just, I'm going to stop the share for a second. Okay. So if we just visualize, most of you, I would say all of you, have done trees with me. When we have trees in the background, we have a big line of trees, and then we're making sky holes and things like that. What I've noticed is when I was thinking about all of this morning, I was thinking about that tight, there were so many people. They all kind of make one blob. They kind of look like trees, like a line of trees because they combine in the middle. And then we're going to be making little holes to represent the separation in the feet and to change the size of, somebody's really tall standing next to me. Now there's that negative space between our heads. So it's kind of like pushing the sky down into the trees. So we're going to be pushing the sky in between all these little tiny heads working together, kind of a thing. So just kind of think about that and keep that in your head as we're going is, and like when we're drawing still life, take your brain out of the equation. We are looking for abstract shapes. We are looking for angles. If we can make a rectangle out of it, fine. But if not, we're just finding all kinds of angles and shapes in light and dark. And that's what's going to make all these figures. All right, I'm going to switch again. I'm going to switch to, actually, you can just stay over here anyway. You can stay on this side. I'm going to switch to my webcam, which is right here. And I'm going to be working flat today, so you guys can see. I have the webcam as high as it will go, so I will try to fill my screen the best that I can. I literally touched my piece of paper like it was going to be my mouse. Had it like around. Oh boy. Guess the coffee, oops, I guess the coffee hasn't sunk in just yet. Okay, here we go. Push some stuff out of the way. So you can get your drawing stuff together if you don't already have it. I have one of those pads of paper that's it's toned brown. You know, like that. Just is kind of fun. I did that so I could use, I have a white pastel pencil. Is it a pastel? Yeah, it's a pastel pencil. But you don't need that. You can use the white of the paper. I have my grayscale pens, not all of them. Who knows where the other ones are? That's always a good question in my world. Somebody had recommended this brand Tombow. And it was like 60% off one day that I happened to see. So I got that set. That was nice. And I do really like them. These pens they have a brush side, like the thicker side, and then a point side. The point isn't a sharp point, but it's nice. I'm gonna just get out a variety of value. I don't need to go crazy. I'm not even sure. Actually, let me test how this is gonna mark on this paper. Some of the lighter ones, it shows a little bit. Okay. Let's look at, all right, see, this is where the webcam kind of stinks. I can't get that whole image in there unless we turn it sideways. But I'm going to be working first with the larger of the images. We're going to start a little bit with the buildings themselves. So, again, just sketching, nothing crazy. Don't have to worry about anything in particular. But we're going to talk about those angles again. We're going to talk about, again, most of you have worked with me long enough to know that I use a skewer all the time. So make sure you either have a ruler or some kind of straight edge that can get you the information you need. I do like the skewer because it is skinny. Do you need a skewer? Do you have one? Okay. Sometimes paintbrushes are tapered and that can mess you up a little bit, but any straight edge will do. The ruler, unless it's a clear one, then if you can't really see what's going on in that, you know, almost inch or whatever, it gets a little goofy too. So let's talk about 1-point perspective. Just pretend the people aren't there. When we just talked about the composition of this particular image, we talked about the focal point being practically in the center. For 1-point perspective, that focal point is also your disappearing point. That's where your horizon kind of goes away. That's where everything goes into. If you take your skewer, even that shadow line ends at that focal point. The sidewalk. Look at that extreme edge of the roof of the building, focal point. This one's a little, no, it still does. For a second, I thought it wasn't going to do it, but it does. Everything is super extreme and goes right down to that dot. There are plenty of quick videos on 1-point perspective on YouTube. If this is something that you struggle with, for sure, look it up. One of the exercises is kind of fun. We're not going to do it today because I didn't tell anybody to bring a thumbtack and a piece of string. But if you put a thumbtack with a piece of string right at that focal point, and then you hold the string up here, and then you draw the line for the string, and you take that string and you use that string, everything from that focal point, and then all you have to do is put in your vertical lines, and you have your 1-point perspective. It's as simple as that. That is not a joke. It is literally as simple as a thumbtack with a piece of string, and you can get all of those angles, because no matter what, straight up and down is straight up and down. The only thing that changes is these angles. Or then again, most of the buildings in Italy were pretty straight. I didn't really see too many decrepit, buildings in Rome. They were all pretty straight. But for the most part, straight up and down is always going to be straight up and down. So, I've gone wrong. Let's go that way. All right. So, I'm going to start with, I have an ebony pencil. Actually, forget, I'll just do it in marker because it's only paper. If I mess up, I mess up, right? I'm gonna start with the concept of, I'm just for the sake of what we're learning with 1-point perspective, I'm just gonna kind of draw a quick outline of my thumbnail, which is a long, not straight box, but that's okay. Which means I'm gonna move. So I'll make this obnoxious dot right here so we can see. That's what my focal point is going to be. That's where I'm going to be translating all of this from. And so again, we're just practicing the generic 1-point perspective. I'm going to start with the sidewalk. Now, obviously, when I'm putting my skewer through there, it's going through a lot of people. I can only see a little bit of that sidewalk, but I know based on how the people go, well, that's going to be a good lesson too. Look at that. That's something that you may or may not think about. If I put my skewer right here, everybody's head goes to there. The only difference is they get smaller as they go into the distance. So hold on a second. Let me, I totally got sidetracked, but I think it's worth it. Hold on. I'm gonna put my clear, I have a clear bag. I'm gonna put that over there for just a second to show you how fun this is. Look at that. The only thing that changed was the size of the human beings. But they fit all in these nice sharp angles that go to that focal point. As you get a little bit further back, yeah, there's a little bit of variation in there, but overall, when we simplify things, those people are fitting into this little silly perspective. And that's going to be part of what we use for our proportioning with the buildings and the people. But you know, those are things that the simplest thing in art is observation. The simplest thing is taking the time to just analyze. You know, I'm really, really guilty of just jumping into a painting without taking any prep time. I take a glance, I get a general idea of what I'm going to do, and then I'm like, oh, oops, had I noticed that before, I could have planned for it. So doing these types of exercises is always good. So I'm going to start with the sidewalk there that cuts right through the people. My box is not the same. But one thing that is consistent, no matter what, are angles. Working on, like, let's say my image was this tiny and I'm blowing it up. The angles are always going to be the same. You're just changing the overall size, but those angles will always be the same. I'm currently working on an image. Let me see if I can show you on my phone. It'll show up. It's Gabby's picture there. Oh, wait, here it is. Oh, wait, I'll show you with, we just went to Florida for the kids. All right, so one of these has. All right, so this is a current painting that I'm working on. You can see the image that I'm working from over here, right? I'm using the same angles with my skewer to draw on something that is, this paper is 20 by 40. So clearly not, wait a second. I'm almost finished with it. I'm not quite. Oh, that's our fish. We got a fish now. My friend gave me the fish for Gabby's birthday. She wanted to get something special for Gabby, which is super sweet, but oh. Oh,
It's
I
a
guess I
lot.
haven't taken progress pictures in a while. It is a little bit of a commitment, right? But that's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's where I am right now with it. So tightening things up. But again, that's 20 by 40, but all of those angles still match the skewer and just making the buildings taller. Everything's just a little bit taller. So no matter what, these angles are always going to be necessary. So I'm just using roughly my skewer as a little bit of a straight edge, not 100% of a straight edge, but just a little bit. I'm going to, the one thing that I do feel like I make up, and this is again based on your paper, I'm looking at this center gap that's open. I'm going to determine how tall that building is. This is one of those arbitrary things. You're determining how tall you want your buildings to be based on how tall these lines are and on your paper. So you'll see what I mean in a second. This is always something that's a little tricky. When you go to the vanishing point, you can see that some of the rooftops stick out differently. So you'll have moments where it's not all one straight line because the buildings are different heights and different sizes as you go. And it looks like this street also, maybe it curves just a little bit. So it changes that angle of the roof. Those are all things to just observe. Where Kaiser's going crazy about. So what I'm going to do is I'm still going to just put that generic, just for the sake of the exercise, I'm just going to take that generic angle and then I'll make the adjustment. This would be something if I were doing this for the beginning of a painting, I would be doing this in pencil. I wouldn't be putting all of these strong lines. I would be taking my time. And again, these are just, I got a little wonky there. I pushed a little too hard. That's okay. And then there's that little building that goes across the back. Okay, so. My goodness. All right, yeah, the street does curve just a little bit. We'll talk about that in just a second. Let's get some of these basic ones in there. I still didn't do the shadow, so I want to get the shadow. And then there's no shadow on the other side of the street, but we do have the other sidewalk. Oh, and I have the top of the sidewalk there. So little things like, okay, that's the curb. I'm just kind of sketching in that little bit of the downward shadow line. I'm really obsessed with directional mark making, you guys know that. So when I'm making that little shadow line, I'm not just completely making another little line there. Okay, so let's take a minute to build from the center out. All right. I'm going to take that line a little higher. I'm definitely not going to get all of this information in there. But what I do want to do is take a look at, oh, the two buildings curve at a different rate. So again, these are the things that the skewer helps me with. This building, this first one in the center, has a different curve than this one, which has a different curve than this one. The overall angle will cut through to the vanishing point, especially this front building. But these two guys kind of do their own thing. So for right now, it is just these crazy lines that we're focusing on. So angle is an angle. I'm not worried about the vanishing point. I just want to get that angle. As you can tell, everybody, it's funny when people say, I can't even draw a straight line. I cannot either. So my my vertical drops going down aren't quite the same, or aren't quite that great. Actually, that second building does kind of fall in line. It just falls in closer. So we'll just do that. Oops, went into the sidewalk. That's why we do sketches. Okay, so see this little box here? This is where everything is going back. It looks like there's must be a little alleyway. So when you can see the design of the building, this will tell you your height. So the angle of this right in here, the angle that goes back into that alleyway will help you represent your height. So it has a little bit of a downward motion until you get closer to the bottom and it straightens itself out because it becomes to the viewer's height. And then these, oopsies, follow to the vanishing point. And then you can throw your windows in. Which these are windows and looks like maybe some extra shutters or something. I'm not worried about that in black marker. Now the little rooftop goes to that. And then let's just pretend we're gonna get to right here. I'm not gonna fold it because I'm not sure how much we're gonna use. So I'm gonna basically cut this building off. and just use this nice little edge here. And it's almost straight. And it has this nice little angle for all that trim. That is one thing that they did nice, is all that trim. You can certainly, some people can absolutely eyeball all of this and just determine, this is how that angle goes and everything's fine. I have learned my lesson many a times that I really should not eyeball things all the time. I should have some form of reference, whether it be the skewer or something. So I super condensed those that building there. But so now if I just, without even looking at the photograph, to just for the sake of 1 point perspective, I'm going to put a row of windows in. So the tops and the bottom of the windows are just like all the other lines. They use that vanishing point. And then you can see the closer we get to ground level, to our eye level, the angle becomes less severe, a little more pleasant. And then let's say that's our doorways that we have. So 1 point perspective is 110% based on that vanishing point. Everything you need to know, all lines literally, all points literally end at that vanishing point. I don't know what that was. And then, these windows, they're so, I mean, this is where your brain starts to kind of trick you, because you're drawing these lines that are so severe, but it's just all based on where you're standing. If you're here, those angles, if you look up, they are really, really strong angles. How does everybody feel about 1 point perspective? I know it's kind of a boring thing, but it is kind of necessary. Does anybody have any questions on 1 point perspective? There is such thing as 2 point perspective and 3 point perspective and all that kind of stuff. We're not going to go into that today, but just so you briefly understand, 2 point perspective would be,
We did that one in New York was 2 point.
yeah, we did one with 2 point at 1 point, but it's like you're standing on the corner and you can see down 2 sets of streets.
Oh.
So like a corner of a building would be here. I guess it would go that way. See, that's why I need a skewer. I don't make things up well. It goes it goes to the vanishing point. So it's just all about, walking down a street basically. And how many streets you kind of see is basically what that all is talking about. It does get a little more complicated, and quite frankly, I wouldn't necessarily do a 2-point perspective painting. I like to keep things simple. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about with buildings in general. Just that simple concept of finding your way around the photograph and finding your way back. What I find is when I'm just like the Venice painting that I'm doing right now, I had all these lines all marked in, all perfectly placed. And then I actually had to use a yardstick because it was so long. But then once you start painting, you start to lose or you tweak just a little bit and you've lost that perfect angle on the top of that line of windows or something. And then you have to find your way back again. You can always find your way back with your skewer and double checking your angles. That's really what it comes down to. Especially once we get going, I'm not counting windows, and all of this little decoration, all those, we're just gonna represent everything. So, yeah. All right, let's move on to people for a minute. Yay, people. That's why we're here. It's mainly the people, in all honesty. It's always the people. I'm just looking at my notes here that I was talking about before, making sure I didn't miss any of the points I wanted to bring up. If you have it, this is a piece of glassine or tracing paper. We'll use that at some point. Again, if you took the class before on figures, we used a little bit of tracing paper, a little bit of our own drawing skills and kind of compared them. And that's what we're going to do today. If you don't have that, don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. Sometimes copy paper can be see-through enough or not. It's thin enough. You can put it up against a window. I'm gonna start with the ladies, the little group of ladies here. Oh, see, this was from the first class that we did. So we're gonna do some stuff like this, where we're just gonna start to build. Oh, see, I didn't think I used this, but I did. This was the drawing that we did before the other one. Oh, look, see all those angles? That's what we were just talking about. She's our point perspective, but instead of the vanishing point being somewhere up here, it's down at her feet, and everything was, I guess it's not really a vanishing point, it's more of a focal point, but everything is built off of the angles and the height. Almost everybody has the same height. They just go off into the distance. I do love that painting that we did. Okay, so we're going to do some stuff like that now. I'm going to be using a combination of pencils and pens, especially just to kind of get through so you can see. That's what I was trying to say. So you can see what I was doing. I used a dry erase marker on one of those clear protective bags. And I'm going to do that again a little bit to talk about the first part of figures. I couldn't find my black dry erase marker, so I'll be moving things around a little bit so you can see a little bit better if adjusting the camera because I don't like it when my paper's crooked. Kept adjusting my paper to the camera. I can adjust the camera. All right, I'm gonna try my purple. The first thing I want to look at is, before we even start drawing, we're going to take a look at the overall proportion of torso to legs. In situations like this, in settings like this, that is what makes the difference. If you have a person where their legs look like they're ridiculously long to their torso, then it's not going to work. So we need to talk about where to find the midline, and the midline is not the waist. We want it to be the waist. Feels like it should be the waist. It's not far from the waist. So, and everybody is a little different. There are generalities, you know, when we talk about it, but so if we use the waist on this girl, right? So it's, if you look at, hopefully everything can be seen clearly with my big old fingers there. So I'm just looking at the skewer waist of her shorts to her foot is this. And if we take that and go up, we have a whole head. So we can't, that's not her midline, right? The midline, if we find that halfway point, I just use my fingers to go back and forth. It's kind of like right through the middle of your tush, right? It's almost where, you know, in the front, it's about your hip bones. So those are really important things to think about when we're doing this. Because this guy right here, he looks really close to even, right? So if we did the same thing, waistline to foot, and then brought that up, he's still got a whole nother head that would have to be added on there. So think about the hip bones. So the other thing that I like to think about is the midline. I'm gonna try. All right. You can, I don't know how well this is going to be seen, so I'll move the paper out of the way once I do this so you can see what I mean. Shoulders, shoulder to shoulder, draw a line. Imaginary hip to hip. Sometimes it is just a straight line. Sometimes it's not. So we've got when we're thinking about that midline, when we're thinking about that midline of that person, we're thinking about shoulders, hips, and legs. Okay. And that's how we can build. Again, we have the back of her head, so that's kind of nice. We're not going to be focusing on features, but then we can just kind of look at the rest of her. We can just build from those lines. And then I'm going to put this back over the photograph and show you it's probably super wrong, but that's okay. Meaning what I'm adding to it, it could be very wrong, but this is the point of the exercise. This is the point of, you know, what do we trust, right? I'm not going to put her hair in there just yet. I want to see how that falls. So if I put that right back over her, there are her shoulders. Look how big I made her. That's why we have to really pay attention. I made her obnoxiously way too big. Just from those couple of lines, even that can be too much, right? So if I put that initial line where her shoulders were, I gave her giant arms and that giant head. Look at that. So this is why we do these exercises, because here's my thing. Here's what would happen. I could start this painting, place these people, and then draw the buildings in a separate line of thought. And then now I've got Godzilla walking down the street. Look at how tall I made her based on these buildings. She would be looking like she's 10 feet tall. These are the things that we're going to be. So I'm going to do right next to it. I'm going to just kind of trace the shape based on the things that I talked about. I'm going to get her shoulder, get her hip bones, right? And get that center line through the top of her head and down through her legs. Because she's in motion, her center line through her legs is a little bit differently. If she was standing still, her center line would just basically be, what we would think of like a nice little cartoon pair of legs. But she's in motion. So what I started with was, okay, I can see how her arm goes out and down. But understanding those midlines are what we really need to focus on. So now, this one doesn't look terribly wrong. It's just too large for where we have it or for where I had it. So it's not wrong. But what will be wrong is the drawing if I keep going with the painting. So just take a minute. We're going to do a couple of those together. I'm going to do a couple more, and then we're going to start looking at, these girls are mostly in shadow behind them, so that's not going to be terribly fun. So we can look at him in just a
Shoulders,
minute.
everyone.
Yeah, the shoulders and the tops of
Top
their
of the head.
heads. Yep, they all have nice, bright, shining light. It's 10 o'clock. If anybody needs a break, I've been talking at you for about an hour now. If you need a break, take a break, stretch your back, walk around. I'm going to work on doing a couple of little individual people. And then the next exercise is going to be that abstract shape of all the people and filling them in. So people for just a little bit. I'm going to pause the recording. I think I need some water too. So I'm going to pause. Okay.
Sum up what you just did.
Yeah. Since I forgot to press record again, I'm going to briefly talk about what I just did. So we just did another girl here. As it turned out, her dress is the perfect midpoint, and not necessarily midpoint for the body, but it matches the length of her legs is the length of her dress. So that helped me out a lot. We were just talking about now how to determine the proportion of the buildings if you made your person that large. So we got a nice angle from the top of her head to the corner of the window, so we can determine how high the window was. Actually, we can go one step further and go to the other side of the window based on that same point of her head, and then you can see how wide the window should be. So point to point, point to point, it makes its own set of angles, these little angles. So now it determines how large this window should be based on that singular point. So you don't have to have actual mathematical measurements. Using your angles will determine your proportions in relationship to everything that's around each other in the photograph. But where we were going next was the concept of, okay, well, now we have all these little bricks and all this little detail and all this fun stuff on the buildings. But if we're working on a piece of paper that's 9 by 12, which is pretty much what my sketchbook is, we're not getting in this entire image when I made her this large. We're probably going to get in maybe that. And even still not as tall. Let's see. We go. Yeah, 2, 3, 4. We'll probably get a little bit into there. So when we talk about the proportions of the people to the building, this is where that comes into play. This is gonna come into play as to how big your painting is. If you already have a set piece of paper and that's what you're working with, that's almost a little easier than determining, if you want everything in your image to fit on your 9 by 12, you kind of, you know where you're going with that. And you know that you have to make each person however large you're going to make them. Here, and this is kind of fun, I do like to just make things how I'm going to make them and then go from there. So, but if I were to base it off of that, I would have to find all those little angles for all the things that relate to her. And the next thing could be the height of her friend that's standing next to her. So her friend is just in front of her. She might not be taller than her. I look. Actually, the girl in the blue is taller than the girl next to her, but the girl next to her is in front of her. So she looks like she's a little bit taller because her head's a little bit higher. So we could build from there. I had a whole thought of where I was going before I realized that I wasn't recording, and now I forgot what that was. So let me see what time it is because I really want to. All right, it's about 10:25. So Kathy, I know you have to get going soon. The next things that we're going to do by the end of the class, and Kathy, I'll put the recording out there for you and for everybody else in this class. But the next thing that we're going to do, thanks. We're gonna I think we're going to go ahead and put the one person next to her. That'll be the next exercise we do. Then we're going to work on the concept of the group of people and how to represent individual people in this whole group setting. And of course, when we get to the painting, you don't have to paint everybody. You can paint as many or as little people as you want. You don't have to do everything that's in the photograph. Again, that's our right as the artist to interpret the photograph however we want. But once we do the next set of people, then we're going to start to play with compositions, light, dark, abstract shapes, how they all work together, kind of a thing. So let's just take a minute and go through setting up the girl next to her. So that's, you know what, this is where, it can get a little tricky because I like the way she looks. I like the way it looks like she's slightly in motion. She definitely isn't standing straight up and still. But putting the person next to her and making that person look just as real and just as in motion as her is a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother challenge. And that's what we're looking at with people in the cityscape. There's always more than one person in a city at a time. So unless even still in the middle of the night, there's always more than one person out. So we're going to start to make some markings so they can look like they belong next to each other. One's not too small and doesn't become a child. One's not too big and becomes what were those ladies? The Amazon ladies. Amazonians or was that a show? Maybe it was a show. All right, so if I'm looking at this girl, before I make any marks of any kind, I'm going to look at her shoulders, her hips. It's not much different than the girl next to her. However, they just have their legs are completely different. And her head's turned a little bit more. So let's first determine, and this is how we're going to be doing it anyway for our painting. We're going to be looking at setting up the spaces properly. So I'm going to just start to make a couple of marks. I want to see top of head to top of head. That's going to create its own angle. So I've got it touching both. Actually, I might have to put my glasses on to make sure because the value is a little bit different. So top of head to top of head. Just gonna make that little mark to represent where I think the top of the head is gonna go for the girl next to her, right? Angle from the bottom of the shoe to the bottom of the shoe. That's a nice, where they go from them. It's a nice sharp angle. I'm looking at both shoes for a second. Because her foot is turned up. So I'm gonna get a little bit of a. Now I haven't really looked at the distance between them. I'm just generically placing them. So in this situation, the distance between them doesn't really matter because this is our painting. So it doesn't matter how far apart they are, unless this was a portrait of some sort. So I'm mostly concerned about their relationship in size as they go back into space. They shouldn't be, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter how far apart they are. It does. If I were to worry about this spatial relationship in their size and I put her all the way over here, that wouldn't make sense. Because if she was all the way over here, she would be back in space. She would be this small, right? So it does make a little bit of a difference. It's just, you know, if we were within a half inch, it's okay. All right. Let's go into town again. The windows are even closed up there.
There's a lot of work.
There's
Street
a lot of
and
workers.
They're working on the street next to me.
Again,
Mhm.
so overall this construction on my street with all,
Mhm.
they replaced all the water lines starting
Mhm.
like right when the school year ended from
I remember.
Mill all the way down.
Mhm.
Oh. And they're still not done. The road's all tore up. Okay, so I'm looking at shoulders again. See, this is where again, you know, it's just nice to have that first one in there, and it always feels like it's a struggle to get started on that first one. But really, the second one is 10 times harder mentally
Yeah.
to get to start than you see me completely dragging my feet right now, but I just gotta dive right in, right?
Mhm.
So I'm gonna look at her shoulders. And I can tell too, shoulder height to shoulder height, that's gonna be another, they're about even. So now I know that her shoulder angle is going slightly up because she's in a different stride.
Mhm.
So her shoulders kind of go up. Her shoulders tilted down to the right. Hers are going up to the right
Mhm.
because she's got her other foot forward. Okay. But based again, her hips are pretty straight. Um, Not quite angled. They are, oh, look at that. That kind of evens out where I'm supposed to be. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe. It might be a little low. So this is where, again, it gets tricky because remember I had her legs too short and I was like, oh, I'll just make them longer.
Yeah,
Well,
but
as
the
I'm
same-
doing them next
yeah.
to one another, I'm gonna have to adjust differently. So I'm taking my time, getting all that in there. Let's do this line, that straight line from the top of the head to the middle of the hip is about like that. I just moved it. Got it stuck on the wire there. Again, just a very slight angle.
Hmm.
And then if I just pick her left leg, it creates a very specific angle. And then I can draw the flesh of that angle from there. Sometimes this line here will go down the middle of two legs. Sometimes it goes down the middle of one leg. Sometimes it's the edge of a leg. That's up to you. Just remember what you chose. So you're building the leg properly from there. Let me just look at these hip lines again, because I think it's almost easier to see this information from the front because you can see where the hips are. We're kind of guessing through their tushes where their hips are. Because that's not her waist, that's her hips. Okay. I said that's the top of her head. So now I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it for a minute, right? So the front of her face, just a little triangular shape. Looking at her hair there. My little line for her shoulders wasn't necessarily the tops of her shoulders. It was just shoulder, not shoulder blade, but end of the shoulder to end of the shoulder. So it kind of cuts through a little bit of everything. She's got a lot of hair, so it's kind of, I have a tendency to want to draw everything super, super big. So it becomes a challenge for me, like, oh, that looks like it's supposed to be bigger. That should be bigger. That should be bigger. And it's really hard to keep it toned down. So I'm looking at the angle of her arm and then where it ends on her. Her elbow is about where her jean shorts are. So this is in that beginning before where I put with the dry erase marker and I made the girl look much bigger than she should. This is the same kind of thing I'm doing right now, making her too big. And her purse kind of falls right with, I shouldn't get too attached to this for right now. I feel like I'm already feel like she's already a little too,
Detail.
well, not necessarily, well, detailed for the fact that I'm not 100% confident of size just yet. So I do that, make it her leg back in here. Again, always use your angles. That's supposed to be the bottom of her foot. Yeah, I feel like her legs are now way too short, but I'm gonna check that in just a second. Maybe not. Okay, so if I look at this girl and do the same kind of thing, this girl's dress was short enough, but this girl's dress is about the length of this girl's shorts. So if I go shoulder to shorts, shorts to foot, well, that one it's a little shorter. And that one's about right. So yeah. Oh, it is right. Hold on. Let me do that again. All right, so it goes shoulder to shorts to the bottom of the foot. So shoulder to shorts, shorts to the, well, it pretty much is correct. Okay. So I trust my angles and my measurements more than I trust what I think I see. Right in here, it's hard to tell. I think this is this girl's arm that cuts through into her. So that's something that I have to, I think maybe I have her elbow a little if. All right, so now I'm just gonna block in a little bit more of that shadow. That is the that. I gave her a tank top. It's not a tank top. I gave her a sleeveless shirt instead of a tank top. And then that's her purse strap that goes way down. But these are things, again, I'm still more detailed than what we're gonna have in our painting. So it is really good to have all this stuff worked out before it's in painting form. Because when you're trying to simplify the marks, that's where the problem lies. If you don't understand what everything is, yes, you're trying to simplify. Yes, you're telling your brain, just look at the abstract shapes. But if you can't clearly define the abstract shapes, then there's a whole nother set of problems with that. So this kind of helps with that. Oh, I'm gonna look, yeah, no, that's correct. So I just took a second to look at knees on each person. So like the backs of her knees that also helps with creating the right type of motion. So, the back of her knee to the back, that creates an angle. So the back of this knee to the back of this knee, that's so that this whole front leg looks really stiff. I need it to go forward in space. And this was a little bit above. So now that's moving it forward in space to have the back of her knee be a little bit higher. It's not perfect, but angles, angles, angles. I cannot stress enough to check your angles. Your angles will be your saving grace. So I'm just going to block in a little bit of shadows. She's got this lovely triangular shadow. Those are the things that we'll be looking at when we get to the flesh colors. That is a perfect example of helping define all that we see around us, is that little abstract shape of shadow right there. When we get to color, I will not be concerned with the pockets on her jeans. I will be concerned with, you see this shoe? The whole part of the shoe is in shadow, and then we have that nice bright white light hanging out right on top. That's what's going to make that pop. This little shadow shape that comes off her foot and then connects to the other foot. That's going to be huge information. This girl doesn't have it. Why? Because we have a whole line of shadow at their feet that comes right from here. So when we paint that, she's got a bag. So this whole line. This is the curb. Those are the things that we'll be working on. Wow, that's a giant bag between them. I was like trying to connect this as a shape that went up there, but it looks like she's holding a whole big brown bag. Again, you don't have to put that in. It's your painting. It doesn't, the bag doesn't have to exist if you don't want it to. She's got a little watch on holding the bag. I'm gonna run and get something real fast. I'm not gonna pause it because I'll forget to put it back on.
Are you there, Kath? Oh, I guess Kathy had to go.
Couple of things. So these are some more exercises from the last class that we did, very similar to what we're doing right now. We were talking about on this one, which we can do this again too, just using the circles to build people. This woman right here was wonderful because she had such strong light and shadow, which we can get from the people on this side of the street, which is always fun. And we did this lady looking down and then we moved it into color. So when we're talking about that shadow shape on the girl's arm, she has that shadow shape, and it's a multi, because of the way the sun is shining down so brightly. She has, it's three parts. It's the brightest of the skin, a shadowed skin, and then a really dark skin.
Mhm.
So those are the things we're gonna focus on, is oversimplifying the color and the marks. As you can see, I have 10, 20, and 40 written. I know it's backwards, but we did 10 strokes, 20 strokes, and 40 strokes. Amazingly enough, I liked the 10 stroke the best.
Mm.
The 20 stroke came in a close second because I was able to get in those extra dark shadows. But the simplification of the shapes with just a couple of marks and the correct value, that's the next step of what we get to work on with the color. And then I brought the finished painting from what we did from that sketch. Doesn't really focus very well, but you can go.
Lady's not in it.
That's the lady.
No, the lady looking for the shell, the big lady with the hat. You just
Her?
showed us.
Oh, that
was a
other,
different
no,
sketch.
that was a different draw. That's
Yeah.
a different painting.
Oh,
But yeah, I know I have that. So this was that drawing in the beginning of class where I had all the lines coming
Uh-huh.
from her.
Yeah.
So that's that one. But you can see she has shadows of eyes and nose, but no actual face.
Are you using your square the big pastel when you do all that? Just dot it on, or are
Actually
you
using
the new pastel.
for these guys, I have a set of unison portrait, which they're round. But I use,
And then you can just roll it.
I can
in.
dot. Well, no, I don't want to roll it in there because
Not too
then I
fully.
create a rolling line, and I
Yeah.
don't really want a rolling line, but it is kind of just dotting it
Dot.
into place.
Yeah.
The new pastels, the hard square new pastels, they do work really well in these situations if you have the right
For a
colors.
straight line.
Yeah, so you need, and this is what we're working on too, is the amount of tooth, because when we're using those hard sticks and you're trying to get just a little bit of information, the hard sticks need the right amount of tooth to grab. Otherwise it just smears. So,
Mm.
but okay, so that's
Mhm.
that. All right. Lots and lots of stuff going on here. So
Okay.
now back to our girls here. I want to look at, does it look like they belong next to one another? I feel like I made her a little bit taller than she should have been. Yeah, I think maybe I just lost her top line a little bit. Yeah, okay. So they do look like they belong to one another. I did put a little bit extra in between them. And maybe it would look a little bit nicer. My daughter. When do you want my Christmas list?
Oh my gosh. There's some.
Not in October, child. Okay. All right. Does anybody have questions on the figures themselves? And does anybody want to do more of the figures? Anybody? You do more?
I vote yes.
Okay. All right, let's get a couple more people in here. I'm gonna just keep going down the line of the girls here. And then I'm gonna throw in the man. So I'm gonna do the girl in the black. I'm gonna just go ahead and do the girl in the black dress because C is gonna be great for our painting because she's got an overly simplified look, just like the girl in the blue, the girl in the black. It's just, this is going to be one of those times when we get the pastel in our hand and it just goes shoop, shoop, and she's done, kind of a thing. So let's look at her, and then I'll throw him in. And let me see, if we look at the proportion of things I want to look at. So the tops of their heads are almost all the same, right?
Mhm.
because he's going back into space. So the tops of the heads are really similarly. The feet are where that's how we're going to get the size difference. So I can put him, I'm just going to kind of place him for a second way over here. And then I'm going to place his feet. So I'm just going to take
So his head's the same.
it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to take, because I already have her and I like her established, I'm going to take the bottom of her feet to the bottom of his feet and check that angle.
Which girl did you come?
The blue dress girl.
Okay.
So that angle.
Oh, okay.
All right. So let me get my angle so if you guys can see, blue dress foot to his foot gives me this angle. I'm gonna have to probably move this off the screen so I can transfer my angle properly. So I'm gonna go.
And I'll do his size. Like it's a
That's
size
gonna get
right?
his size. That's gonna get his height.
Yeah.
Yep. So now we can
Mhm.
see he's only gonna be this little.
Uh-huh.
We'll give him a little kind of coffin-y shape for a second. So that's his whole head. We have to remember that includes a head. So I'm just gonna kind of notate that by giving him a big, now it looks like a thumb. It looks like I drew a finger over there, but that's okay. So if I go, I'm just gonna generically place him. I'm doing more on him than I thought I was gonna do at first. And it was funny too. It was so hot, but these guys, these Italian men, walking around in full suits, and you know, I'm like, what? I can barely breathe.
They have a lot of air, like air conditioning.
No, the air
No.
conditioning sucks. Their idea of air conditioning is not our idea of air
No.
conditioning.
No.
That
Just
is
cuts the
for
humidity
sure.
a little bit. That's
Yeah,
it, right?
basically. Yeah, they just leave their windows open and oh
Well,
no,
at
it's
least you didn't-
good.
At least you didn't pick Paris.
Oh gosh, that would seem to be really crowded too, based on
They've
what I
got
saw
a
on
whole
Facebook.
terrible bed bug infestation right now. The entire city.
Ooh, my
So that's good.
gosh. All right, so you see how I just threw him in there? And now he's like, it looks kind of funny with him by himself, but it looks like he's looking down over that way too. He's looking at a shop. He's got his little European carry-all bag.
Mhm.
But he's also got really dark pants on. So um
Hmm.
I know I went to do the other girl first, but that's okay. This is, you know, because he is so much smaller than the girls, right? We don't have a lot of room for information. So it was super easy to just make that decision to go into, I'm going to use this gray one here because his shirt is white, but it's that nice solid. I'm going to take the white pencil here and get that whole shoulder section, top of his head.
Mhm.
I think that got a little heavy. So I could tweak him over time with the fact that he's looking down, but actually I made him, he kind of looks like he's looking forward, but that's okay. And he has a lovely shadow, right? Looks like it's kind of noontime with all the way the shadows are working. It comes down all the way. That foot is up, but it meets the shadow. So if I add in I add in the angle of the street, the sidewalk over here, then things make a little more sense too, for his proportion to their proportion, kind of a thing, right? So now they all start to look like, so let's get another girl because of how big I made them. I can only really put in one more girl because if I put in the other girl to match their sizes, he's going to be too small.
Yeah.
Right? So these are the decisions. When you make these decisions, okay, I like that size. I'm just going to go with it. So when you make these decisions and then you go, oh, but I still want him. Now you have to change. You have to be willing to adapt because if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's that small, this girl is going to look, he's going to look like either a little kid or she's going to just look like she's just going to be too big. So let me just look at this real fast. So I'm going to take the size of her, the size of the blue dress girl, right? Head to toe. Now I'm going to compare that to the man. So he's 1, 2, 2 and a little bit. Yeah, like 2 1/3. So this should work because I based it on her head. Although why do he does look higher than that. I guess he's not that much higher. So 1, 2, he's a little short, but not by much. Well, wait, maybe I included his shadow. I did remember though, I added a little bit to his feet. So if I go not the shadow, oh yeah, it's pretty darn close. So they are gonna match a little bit, right? Okay, so I'm gonna work on one more girl. Wrong way. I'm opposite, and it's like I have to remember that one so you guys can see what I'm doing. Looks like it's gonna rain or something.
It's supposed to rain later.
Is it?
Well, be cloudy anyway. Rain tomorrow.
Gabby's got homecoming tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it is supposed to rain tomorrow.
I think so, right? Or is it? Yeah.
But it should clear by the end of the day, I think, and the afternoon leads me
Oh,
back where it is. I don't know about down here.
She should be fine. She's
Who are they playing? HT?
no idea. Now that Sam's not in that marching
Yeah,
band,
yeah.
I don't pay attention. My husband would know. He's still following the football because they're doing really good.
Yeah, they are doing well.
Is she in a sport, Renee?
No,
No.
we
she's
tried
in
again.
the
We
band.
tried field hockey again. She did field hockey in 6th grade and then it didn't stick. And then she decided she wanted to try it again I'm like, you're going into your sophomore year and you're gonna jump right. And she's like, yes, I can do it. I'm like, okay. So I bought all the equipment and she started working out a little bit before. She did 1 day of conditioning and that was it.
It's hard.
Yeah,
It's very hard.
And I think she realized just how much work she needed to do.
Yeah.
And if you don't love it to begin with, it's just not inspiring to do that kind of work.
Does she like art?
She used to. She kind of changed a little bit on that. She was really good. She's really creative.
I should get back to it, maybe.
I'm really hoping that she does.
They like that. Well, I don't even know if she's still there. That crafts teacher there.
She's got crafts right now.
They love her. If it's the same teacher.
It's a girl. I do know it's a girl.
They love her. They do super cool. Tommy took it. They did super cool projects like wire sculpture.
Oh, cool.
All kinds of like different mediums. It's really, and they get to pick their
thing.
Expressions a little
That's
less.
Nice. Gabby keeps making these balls and she brings them home. They're like it's like a 3-dimensional like I don't know how they're doing it. It's like
It's a clay?
No, it's paper.
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah.
The next
Uh-huh.
break I'll go get one because she keeps bringing them home and I'm like,
They're like
I don't know what I'm
geometric things.
yeah,
Yeah.
like and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with them, Gab.
Mm.
She's like, that's for you. I'm like, thank you.
Hang up from the
Mhm.
Christmas tree.
I know, right?
Yeah,
They
or
could
from the
be Christmas
chandelier.
ornaments. All right, blue girl head to girl in the black dress head has its own little angle, which is almost straight. But blue girl looks again because she's closer to me in the photograph. She looks like she's taller than girl in the black, but not by much.
Right.
So I'm gonna mark the top of that girl's head. I did randomly just draw her feet. If anybody was watching while I was talking, I drew the bottom of the girl's feet because I wanted it to match. You see how their feet are almost in line with one another.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was kind of going for. And I was trying to, I didn't quite succeed. I don't think. I was trying to get them closer together than these two. I didn't measure. I could sit there and measure. I'm not going to measure right now. I just want to get in the overall size and shape of the figure. Since we're not including the fourth girl, it will be fine in connection to our little man over there. But I just kind of wanted to get that. So I'm looking now. I want to look at things like the bottom of her dress.
Mm-hmm.
This little point at the bottom of her dress, where does it fall on her friend's leg, basically?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like there. So I'm just, again, I'm eyeballing things. I'm roughly doing things. These girls are pretty even. She's got her little purse hanging, and then I'll come back and I'll double check everything. But I did not do her shoulders. They're slightly dipping to the right, down to the right, slightly. So I can throw those in there. And the good thing is too, when it comes to figures and all that kind of stuff, we don't know these people. It's not a portrait. It's just a suggestion that it is a human form. Like that's,
Mhm.
just like when we do clouds and we do moving water, nobody's going to come and say, nope, that's not how that moving water went. It's just a person. As long as it's represented as a person.
And I guess the background ones you just do swishes then, right?
Yeah, so we're going to get into that a little bit.
Just color.
Yep.
Really.
That's going to be the whole thought where, the groups of people are like trees.
Yeah.
We're going to make it like a big blob, and then we're going to highlight some features that make it, oh, that's a person's head. That's a highlight on the person's,
You see the guy on the bike? They got put him on. I like the
the guy on the bike.
I think the guy on the bike. Yeah, it looks like it's on a bike.
Oh, yeah, he is on a bike. Yeah, this guy right in the middle there.
Mm-hmm.
He could certainly go in. Um, wait, is he in my? Oh, he is. He's right here. What time is it? It is. Oh, it's already 11. Okay,
What time did we finish?
11:30.
Oh, good.
This is certainly going faster than I.
Mhm.
I was kind of
It
worried
always
about.
does.
I was worried about not having enough and thinking that, but this is working. I know. Silly me.
She's left.
I feel like this girl's legs are a little short.
Mine were too. But
Maybe
she
she
might have
looks.
misproportioned short legs. You know how
She
some people
does
have
look like
that?
she has her legs
does.
are a little
I think
short.
she does.
It's okay. I'm just gonna, for the sake of time, I just want to kind of get her in there.
Yeah.
She looks like the chubby friend.
Shorter.
She's my spirit animal. She's the chubby friend. It's fine. It's totally fine. But look at that bag. Look at that wonderful amount of shadow. Like it's blue, that little blue shadow that we're gonna, those are the fun things that we're gonna run into. Next is, when we are painting, we're gonna have these strong, just taking that marker tip, these strong little shapes. Well, that's really close in value. That didn't work. That's okay. But she's also got that shadow shape on the back of her arm. And she's got that little bit of,
She's big because there's not a ton of light on the building. So.
right, that side of the street doesn't have a lot going on. I can take. But see how fast I'm moving? We don't have to move this fast when we paint, but this is kind of the goal, to get that little bit of gesture in there, where it's just quick and confident. Once you figure out how to observe those angles, you can quickly move through some information.
Renee, I hate to break in, but I've got to go. I've got an appointment. So I will see you next week.
We're almost done. We're gonna just look, the last little bit's gonna be the overall composition. We're just gonna do a couple of quick little thumbnail sketches of what we're gonna be doing next week.
Okay.
Okay. So you can look at it, or you can just come to class prepared with what you think your composition is gonna look like.
Okay, great.
Okay.
This was good. I like this. I needed this review of perspective too.
Good.
Always. Right.
Always.
Right? It can never ever hurt. That is for
No.
sure.
No. All right, great. Thanks, ladies.
All
I'll see
right.
you next week.
See you
All
next
right.
week.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. All right. So now that we've got all that in there, it's hard to all right.
So you're gonna do which one? Do you think next?
I kind of like when we had all three photos up. This one I
Yeah, I
liked
like
the
that
best
too.
because we moved our focal point off to the side.
Yeah, like that.
So no matter what we do for this last part of class, you can change your mind. You don't have to have this set in stone. We don't have enough time to put it on our UART paper anyway. But what we do have time to do is kind of block some things in there. So let me just real quick. The last kind of thing I wanted to do is we have all these people. So pretty much if I were just to kind of draw a straight line, if I could get my, oh, it's dead. Well, I guess that's not gonna work. Like, why isn't it marking? All right, I'll just use my pencil again. So if I kind of, yeah, I moved him up a little too high. He's a little too high for them. That's okay. So if I were to do that, then I've got people, got that guy in the white shirt. That's kind of cool. You start to tell that that's people, but what I'm going to have us do, I'm not going to put all these people in there, obviously. But think about the concept of this guy in the red shorts here, right? You take his feet to girl in blue dress feet, you have an angle. And then the same thing with the head to the head, it goes up just a little bit. So the head to the head, see how high I put him way too high. So he should start there. And then I'm going to get the angle for foot to foot again. And he should end about there, which is about the size that I made him. I just made him in the wrong spot.
Oh,
He's
so he's not as high as
actually, well, that's the problem. because I have these guys, this is the thing. This is the reason we plan, right? Because I threw him in over there because I wanted him in there. But now it's messing things up. This guy in the red shorts is good in comparison to him. The first one I did, the second one is good to them, but it's not good to him.
Right.
Those are the kinks we have to work out. Otherwise, we're going to be really frustrated.
Maybe because the girls are too far out.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
this
they
is,
were over.
yeah, they
to
were
the
over,
edge.
they were closer
It's a
together.
bigger
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I got it.
I'm going to turn to a new sheet of paper for just a minute. And here's what we're going to do. Based on, I'm going to do 3 different, I got to hurry because we are running out of time. I'm going to do 3 different sketches, value sketches, based on the 3 different,
Composition.
yeah, the 3 different compositions, croppings that we have, right? So I'm going to do all box. And they don't have to be big because this is no detail whatsoever. I am just thinking about value and very, 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 very abstract. And so if it helps, this is where you can get out your, and we've done this before, where we put tracing paper over and we're going to find our big shapes, right? We've done it for the purpose of finding your big shapes, finding your big abstract shapes. So I'm going to simply sketch for the sake of sketching what I think it would look like. Similar to the beginning drawing that we had, right? But with the addition of the masses of people, the shapes of the people in here. And they would kind of go all the way to the end. So that's the brightest spot. The people, so it wasn't overcast, but it looks like the sun's shining directly down based on the shadows. So the shadows they're not drawn out in any one direction, which leaves us with not that much dynamic light on the buildings, right? So in my opinion, this composition, it's nice, but it's not that great. And one of the reasons is the lack of shadows, right? We can't, like, there's no bright splashes of color coming on the buildings and this and that. But when we start to crop, then we start to change our focus. Then the focus becomes more on the people. And then all of a sudden, oh, there's some bright light right directly on the tops of heads and everything else. So this was the next cropped version. Again, we're just thinking about the overall composition. I'm not drawing people in this scenario. I'm just getting the road in there and the sidewalks and all that kind of good stuff. And then the mass of people have their own shape, right? And they are really dark in value. If you squint, the people are super.
Yeah, you're
heavy.
between the 2 buildings.
Yeah, you're
There's
between
not-
the 2 buildings. It's direct sunlight coming down, not a lot of dynamic stuff happening. But see, now the people are a little bit of a blob, and it kind of works with what we're doing. This becomes the brightest spot. The street itself is the brightest. I could even punch it up a little bit. A little more obvious.
You feel the noon time of the day.
You really do feel
Yeah.
the noontime. You feel that extra heat there.
Mhm.
And then the last cropping we had was off to the right. I do like this one the best. I might play with the cropping and the positioning of how many people I get in here. But I think I'm gonna go with this one. I like the way it feels. My only thing is I did kind of like the girls, but because there's more information.
That way.
Oh, exactly. You could do the other one here. So Mari,
But do you think this is just too much white dead space down here?
no,
you don't?
I don't think it's too much white dead space. I do think it adds to, you could crop in even
Yeah,
more. Yeah, that's what you have. Yeah, you could
I
crop
might
in
keep this guy, just
this guy off to the
the
side.
red shirt guy, right next to the white.
Oh.
Too.
Oh,
I like
okay.
this guy too.
Yeah, I know. I like a lot of these people in here. But no, because
the
we
focal
can
point is
add,
not in the middle, so that's
yeah, so the
good.
focal point is still off. Now this one goes off to the left. So, yeah, I like
But you
either
don't
one.
want this one right in the center, right, of the paper?
I think,
Or
okay,
does it not
so
matter?
as a rule, in general, we have two different things to think about. And these are like generally accepted rules, which is the rule of thirds, which is your paper, should be divided into thirds. I don't think we have that. The other thing is you don't, like, people say you don't want your focal point and or your sun, like if you have a sun in the picture, you don't want that to be right in the middle, because in that it becomes a little bit uninteresting. I was gonna say bothersome, but I don't think it's bothersome. I just think it doesn't.
Take your eye around the
Yeah.
whole picture, you just go right there.
Exactly.
Right.
And, for me, I want there to be a little journey. I don't care if there's not one focal point. I want whoever looks at my work to start in one location and kind of work their way around and then maybe try it the other way. You don't necessarily have to say, oh, that's the focal point. I want them to see, oh, well, this here, and but like this one is kind of nice because all their feet just kind of line up.
This is still more interesting, I think, this one.
Yeah, either one.
Look at the
So
light, all the light. The light's
technically,
on that side of the street.
yeah,
that's
the
not
light
it.
is on this whole left side of the street, which
Right.
is why I liked his shirt. And then
Yeah.
now her bag and then their shoulders and things like that. There's all kinds of things. But the images that I sent you, you could even blow up more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I guess you do kind of have a little homework. I don't normally do homework, but I do want you to settle into what you're doing. I will send you guys the exact crop of what I'm going to be doing. So if you want to follow along with me, you can, or if you want to make up your own cropping, you certainly can. I am definitely not going with the full one. I don't like, and I can say this based on the painting that I'm doing of Venice, I don't like that high, that extreme.
This is nice because all the horizontals right here. Take it
Yeah.
right across.
Yeah.
Look at the buildings.
Maureen was talking about all of this corner here going down this little street. To which I would straighten that because it looks like with the way they cropped, it wasn't quite straight. I would probably make sure
it
that,
straight on the
yeah.
paper, yeah.
Yeah, because like, see this building,
Mhm.
if I straighten that, then that becomes straight and then this becomes crooked. So I would have to do that. So, and this, I don't know what that building was. It looked very important, but I couldn't tell you what it
Does look
was because it has
important.
like the horses on it and stuff.
No, I like that.
Yeah. So yeah, there's so much going on, but I'm gonna take some time and really go through and decide a little more critically. And I think that's always a lesson that I need to remind myself on a regular basis is to really think through why a painting would be good, why it would stand out, coming in from across the way, because the way a photograph stands out is different than the way a painting stands out. So for me, I'm doing the next painting I'm doing of Venice is the gondolas all lined up on the canal. It's hopefully going to be a nicer painting than photograph. Versus sometimes I have a nicer photograph and it doesn't turn out that great in painting. And sometimes that is like that's the other thing I'm struggling with, and we'll talk about it more next week is these buildings are super, 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 super old
Yeah.
and they're dingy. And there's a layer of dinge. There's a layer of like the dirt that you see. Like I wanted to power wash so many things as I was walking down the street. And so that almost creeps into my head a little too much. I mean, it's not like the bright white and blue of Greece. And it doesn't need to be that, but I think my brain is having a hard time.
The dirt.
Yeah. Isn't that saying? It's just a shame. That is one of the things about Rome. They didn't have trash cans. Like there was trash
No.
everywhere.
Really?
There was I think I saw like 2 public trash cans. You can never find any place to throw stuff away. So
Do people throw stuff on the street?
yeah, they're like when you walk up the road, they're like lined with beer cans in the windowsills.
Oh, jeez.
Crazy. That was the only thing I was kind of surprised about. I figured a city as big as Rome, they would, I don't know.
Did you go to Naples too?
No,
Down
I
that
didn't.
way,
I did
Sorrento?
not. We stayed in Rome and then we did day trips to Pompeii.
Oh, okay.
And of
so you
course
didn't-
we did like the Vatican and we did
we didn't go to like Amalfi or.
we did go
Oh,
down to Amalfi.
oh,
The
okay.
last day we went down to Amalfi and we did a ferry over to Positano
Positano,
and
yeah.
then Amalfi.
Oh, that's.
And then we were done, but we were so tired by that time. But we
Yeah,
did, and then we did 2 days in Venice. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording here.
All right, so we gotta figure.